This video is about protecting designs or protecting intellectual property. Now, you might have heard there's various different ways to protect different kinds of intellectual property, and some of the things you might have heard about are patents, copyrights or design rights, and trademarks. When a designer produces a new design or comes up with a new invention, they have to be very careful between the point of time where the design is first created and the time where it goes actually into production and manufacture, because between those two periods there's obviously a chance that other companies could take the design and adapt it to use it as their own, or copy the design and claim it as their own work. Now, one way a designer can protect their intellectual property is through use of patents. Now, a patent grants exclusive rights for the designer to make or sell or use an invention, and it's normally set for about 20 years in most countries. And the designer, once he's granted a patent, has the option to obviously use the patent himself or sell the patent or sell the design rights and things, so that they can take a royalty on how the product will be sold through them. In order for a patent to be granted, it has to hit 4 key criteria. Now, I like to remember these by the acronym MINE, M-I-N-E. Now, firstly, for M, the product has to be able to be industrially made. So it can't be a product that obviously you can't produce in some way, and therefore, as part of your patent application, you will obviously have to provide a detailed description and drawings and technical details so a manufacturer can actually make or improve upon the product. The second step, in order for it to be acquired, is it must involve some sort of inventive step. So it shouldn't be completely obvious that the design is very similar to something else that would exist. It needs to be something new and inventive in that way. And that leads me on to the third one, N, where it must be a new design. It can't be shown somewhere else or already exist within the sort of public market. And finally, it cannot be excluded. Now, you can't patent something if it's on a list of excluded things, and generally these are things that are not physical. So, for example, a discovery, a mathematical method, a scientific theory, pieces of art or literary or dramatic work, or maybe computer programs, all of these things where there is no physical outcome. In addition to patents, you can also obviously take out what's called design rights. Now, you might have heard of copyrights, and effectively in the UK, as soon as you produce something that is your own work, it is automatically copyrighted, or if it's a design, you'll automatically have design rights over that item. The problem is, obviously, in order to protect it, you have to prove that that design was done at a specific time and obviously by you. And the only real way to do this is obviously have the details of the design properly annotated or explained, and these are normally kept with a solicitor, and obviously that will protect you to a degree. However, if you've seen some of the cases quite recently with the production of the Trunky suitcase, that suitcase aimed at children that's shaped a bit like an animal, they recently lost a design rights case to a Chinese company called PMS, who copied the design or come up with something very, very similar, but it was seen as just different enough so that it wouldn't infringe the design rights. But I mean, you can see the picture there, so you can make a decision as to yourself, but in my opinion, it does show how difficult it is sometimes to protect your own intellectual property. Finally, if it is slogans or logos or branding material, so things like the Coca-Cola logo or some of the catchphrases that go with things like McDonald's famous phrase, "I'm loving it," for example, these can be taken as trademarks because all they do is help enhance the brand. So effectively, there are a few different ways that you can protect your work. If it is a design which is maybe not inventive or new in any particular way, but does something in a slightly different style, we can take out design rights, or in the case of written words, copyrights. If it's phrases, logos, or symbols, or things like this, it would generally be a trademarked issue. But if it is something that is obviously able to be made, inventive, new, and not a list of excluded items, as I said, non-physical products, then you might be looking at taking out a patent. Now, the only issue with taking out a patent, apart from this, obviously, is the expense that goes with it. Quite famously, one patent that sort of was under a bit of dispute was the patent for James Dyson's vacuum cleaners, or some of the technologies used in those vacuum cleaners, that was effectively infringed by the Hoover Company. However, quite fortunately, Dyson won the case against Hoover and was paid expenses to make up for the fact that they were infringement of his original patent. However, as I said, this comes at a great expense in terms of legal costs.